Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a really interesting group here with us today. We've got a group called Legs Diamond that appeared on our third issue cover. The third issue of Raw Power had Legs Diamond on the cover, and we're fortunate to have Roger Romeo, the lead guitarist for the band. He's been there from the start till the end, till currently, and they are still active right now. We have Michael Prince, rhythm guitar and keyboard player, and he's been there also the whole way through. So we've got two original members from the group. And they also have a drummer that's been there the whole time too. So when they go out and play, if you go out and see Legs Diamond, you can see three of the five original members, which is very rare today when a band starts in the 70s and they've still kept it together like that, which is really amazing. And so just before I get into it, I'll take you through their discography a little bit. And so they've cut nine studio albums and then some compilations and live albums and so forth. But nine studio albums, and there were the first two were on Mercury Records, and that's when we discovered them. And both of these albums were released in 1977, so that was a very big year for them. It was also a big year for us. That was the year we started the magazine and put them on the cover. And I guess for all of us, our hopes were very high at that time. And it was Legs Diamond, and then A Diamond is a Hard Rock. And then they did Firepower, Out on Bail, Land of the Gun, Town Bad Girl, The Wish, Uncut Diamond, was cut in 1980. Great title for that one, and they resurrected it in 1999, and then Diamonds Are Forever. And I think Diamonds Are Forever is the only LP that Rick Sanford didn't do the lead vocals on, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So without further ado, here we have Michael and Roger of Lakes Diamond. Welcome, you guys.
Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks a lot.
Yeah, good to have you guys here. So a lot of questions for you. I was wondering who managed the band back in the 70s. I was having some trouble looking that up or finding that.
It
Um,
was a company called Toby Entner. It was David Josephs and Warren Entner. They at the time they also managed Angel and Quiet Riot with the original Quiet Riot.
right. We
They
we
were our
right
managers
right
for.
was on our second magazine cover,
There you
and
go.
we had when we interviewed Ozzy. I don't know if you know this, but we originally introduced Ozzy to Randy Rhoads. Now a lot of people take credit for it,
All
but
right.
Wow.
we actually Ozzy was at that interview and he was looking for a guitar player, and we told him the guy you should connect with is Randy Rhoads, and then we explained to him how he would get in touch with him. There's some
Good idea.
controversy. There's some controversy about that, but that's the true story. Anyways, so that's good. And then who do you guys have a manager now, or are you self-managing?
Self-managing.
Okay, got it. And then
We do talk about a manager every now and we have somebody in mind. They're fairly busy, but if we decide that we're going to do like a final tour and really try to put something more than just a 3 date run in Texas or in Europe together, then because we'd still love to get on the European summer festivals. I'm sure this summer's booked, but maybe next summer. And we need some real power for that, and we know some people that can do it. It's just we have to push a little harder or ask a little nicer.
okay, great. And then I'm curious because I tried to look this up, but did Rick write most of the lyrics back in the day for some of the original albums, or who was the lyricist?
The two Michaels and me.
Yeah.
Okay, so three of you were writing lyrics. That's
Yeah, we
good.
pretty much wrote everything.
And so you three did most of the writing then. So we're talking
Right.
uh Michael Prance, right? Yourself, Roger, were you one of the writers?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then Michael
Diamond.
Gargano? Michael Diamond?
Gargano.
Gargano, yeah. Diamond.
We
Okay.
were it's a fun the story behind Michael Diamond is uh we were all going to use the last name Diamond. And
Okay.
then we realized we had two Michaels in the band, and so it was going to be Rick Diamond, Roger Diamond, and Jeff Diamond, but then we had Michael Diamond and Mike Diamond. I go, well, that's going to cause confusing, and I think maybe Toby talked us out of that or something. I don't really remember.
Well, Michael Diamond was kind of like the business guy in the band,
Yeah,
so we wanted to direct anybody who's inquiring about the band and what management wise, and making decisions and stuff like that. So we let Michael use the name, so it looked like we wouldn't have to worry about where the questions or the business was going to go
and
to.
he was pretty good at it, but
He's
the thing
great
is
at
in
it.
the end it bit us in the butt because they sort of thought, well, we have to check with Michael Diamond, and then
Mhm.
he wasn't in the band after the
Well,
third
that
album.
would be a problem. He's not in the band.
Yeah, anyway, but yeah, we were all going to be, because there were some bands on the Hollywood Strip back then that all used the same last name, and of course they never got signed. So anyway, but it was just an idea that was kind of floating around Hollywood for a while, and we didn't do it.
Got it. So I'm going to just tell you, and you can comment on this. I'll tell you what I like the most about Legs Diamond. This is just my opinion. I'm very opinionated, right? So I cover a lot of bands
That's
for a
good.
long time. And first of all, I like your stuff. So I'm a fan of the band. And what I like the most about it, it really starts with the guitars. I think the lead, there's some rip and lead guitars on your stuff. And I love the rhythm guitar sounds you guys, the tones you guys get. Now I know both of you play guitar, so kind of help me with who's doing most of the leads and who's putting in that chunky rhythm.
Well, I do all of leads. And
Oh,
when I first got in the band, I was impressed with his keyboard playing, but then he whipped out his guitar, and he's a keyboard player that plays like a guitar player. So all his rhythm chunks and stuff like that, it's a Les Paul and a Marshall.
That's
So
all it is.
it's not like having a keyboard player and he plays a couple of guitar parts for an afterthought or an ad. We sound like a guitar band when he straps it on.
Yeah,
right.
and I've always just used well, when I could finally afford a Marshall. In the beginning, I had a Ampeg V4 or something.
Ooh,
Oh, that's
ooh.
it. When I think about the tone now, back then you just wanted it to be loud. But when I first plugged into a Marshall, I went, "Oh, this is how my guitar is supposed to sound."
Yeah.
And who's responsible for that chunky rhythm guitar? Is that both of you guys on the recordings, or is it a little more you, Roger?
Well, if it's a keyboard song, meaning he's playing keyboards in it,
Right.
it's all me. If it's a guitar song, it's both of us with the rhythm tones.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the first album, if you think about songs like Stage Fright and Satin Peacock, we're both playing guitar on there. So most of the time, like either Roger will start the song and then I'll come in on the second or third time, or I'll start the song and he'll come in on the second or third time.
Okay, good to know. And
Oh,
then when you guys play live, Michael, are you switching off a lot? You've got your keyboard set up there and you're jumping on the guitar in between songs if you're going to do something without the keyboards, right? And then go back to the keyboards. What
Right.
percentage of songs now in your live show have keyboards, would you say?
60 to 70.
Okay, great, great. That's another thing I like about the band. There's so many bands from that era that weren't using the keyboards as much as you guys were. And I like the fact I love the American Deep Purple thing. I think was a pretty good moniker for the band. It made sense to me when I listened to it. I was also a big fan of Deep Purple. And I don't think any we can get enough of that kind of stuff because there just weren't that many bands. I mean, there's Uriah Heep, obviously. We can go down the line of bands that had that type of a sound, but I like it. And I also liked Rick's lead vocals quite a bit. I felt like he was quite a talented vocalist with a great range, and he had enough of a unique sound that he was his own thing. Rick
Yeah.
Sanford is Rick Sanford, right? So that combination was really strong. I think those were the strengths of the band. And I think the thing that was the biggest downer for me, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I think the album Firepower was a letdown after the first two albums. And I've always personally, the first two albums still resonate with me the most. But and to be honest with you, with groups like Angel and yourself, I had, when I hit a certain age and I got into other things, I just forgot about Lakes Diamond, forgot about Angel. And then recently, as we're doing this Renaissance thing, I got back into it. So I've listened to every one of your albums. And I did the
Thank
same thing with Angel before I interviewed those guys. And there's some real depth of good material there. I think you guys should be really proud about your legacy and the catalog of music that you guys have. I think
Thank
it's
you.
great.
Thank you.
We
Yeah.
only wish that the production would have been better. Uh, the guy that produced our first album was not our choice. It turned out he had produced, I think he
Deep Purple.
produced, but yeah, he produced Deep Purple. But I want to say Toby already had a relationship with him either through Angel or through Quiet Riot, so
Not
that's why
sure.
they already knew him and that stuff. But
I think Mercury might have suggested him.
they might have. I mean, the guy that produced Heart wanted to produce us.
Yeah,
Mike Flicker,
I got Mike Flicker lined up. Yeah, the guy from did Heart, those
Barracuda.
Barracuda, and our management passed on him. So
So they
Yeah.
had a prior relationship with Derek Lawrence, and
that was before
you
Eddie
never know
Lee and
about
Eddie.
things like that, So
Yeah,
second album we're really happy with, but the production of the third album, it should have been better than the second album, and it wasn't. I found this guy down the street from
in
me.
the alley.
His name was Walt Mariner, and he told us that he was Shadow Morton, and we looked him up, and Shadow Morton did, going to the chapel, and I'm going, and we're going like, all right. And he knew somebody at Cream Records, and he said, I can get you guys a record
Yeah.
deal. We went, okay. And we didn't know this at the time, but the engineer was like on heroin the whole time. And Walt kept saying, oh man, if we had that EMT plate, this album would sound so good. And we're looking at him like, I didn't know what that stuff was back then. I know what it all is now because I've done a lot of engineering, but yeah, the EMT plate would have helped a little bit. But
Yeah. Well,
was,
besides the recording of the third album, we were relatively happy with it.
yeah.
But the difference between the first two albums and the third album was we were now with Cream Records, who also had their own publishing company.
Mm-hmm.
So we were sort of forced to do a bunch of covers that we would have not normally have done.
Yeah.
So
there's a funny story in that.
Yeah, the help wanted and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But ordinarily we literally have too many songs, so it's always we never don't have enough songs, let's put it that way. So it's always kind of like a band discussion what song was going to be on the album, and so that meant like 3 or 4 of our songs were not on that album. And then so that's why that Uncut Diamond, when that came out,
Mm-hmm.
that was only about a year we recorded that. It was a year after that album because we still had so many songs to do. So we literally had a whole other album that Cream, we didn't make it on Cream Records.
Yeah.
And we did that as a project with Spencer Proffer over at his Pasha Studios. And it was live. That, by the way, that album, except for the lead vocals, is live.
Yeah.
There's no overdubs.
No overdubs, no nothing.
Yeah.
That was just a quick, one and done demo tape. And a funny story about Cream Records. Like Roger said, they had their own publishing company. They talked us into doing. They didn't talk us. They had us do 3 of their songs, and one of them is called "Help Wanted," and it's the most poppy, schmaltzy kind of song. And so we're going, oh God, this is not us. But we did it, right? So we're on tour in probably 1980, and we're in a little town called San Angelo, and I didn't go. I was in my hotel room, but Rick and somebody else, maybe Rick and Jeff or Rick and you, went to the radio station, and they're saying, yeah, you guys have the #1 song here in town. We're going, wow, that's awesome. And we're figuring it's one of the songs that we wrote. And they go, yeah, it's Help Wanted. And we go, uh-oh, because we had never played it live. So that day at sound check,
now it's playing in my head.
Oh,
please
God.
stop.
And so we didn't even want to play it, but all right, we got to put it in the set. And it sounded okay. And so we put it about 2/3 of the way through the set. And so for the first 2/3, everybody's sitting there and it was packed. People couldn't get in and they're applauding. But as soon as we started Help Wanted, it was like the Beatles just showed up and they all rushed the stage and they're all standing there and screaming. And it's like, we should have probably started with that song. But anyway, it was a really good show.
Another funny story about it. Another funny story about Help Wanted. We were out at the Rainbow, and there was a tradition at the Rainbow. And when we got an album out, they would play that. We'd come up there and have dinner, and they played the whole album, right? So they're playing the album, and this guy comes up to me, and he
Oh
goes,
yeah,
the guy comes up to me, he goes, "Is that your band?" I go, "Yeah, that's our band." And he goes, "I wrote this song."
yeah.
And I go, "Wow, that's so cool." And he goes, "Yeah, I'm somebody like Dave Hudson." And it turned
It
out
was
he's
one of
one of
the Hudson brothers.
it turns out he's one of the Hudson brothers. And he came up, he had a beard and everything. I don't know if you remember the Hudson
You're
brothers.
talking
They
about
had their own show on TV.
right, right. They had a couple albums, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep, yep. Wow, what a trip! What a trip.
I
Um,
mean, he was happy it was
He was
on the
happy.
record. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
he probably made some money.
In Texas at one time.
Yeah.
do you
All
guys,
right.
different question, different direction. Just briefly, I don't want to get into a whole thing on this one subject, but we live in crazy times right now, obviously. And Roger, I've been following you on Facebook. I just
Okay.
want to I want to give you kudos for standing up and making some noise about all the crap that's going on. So I think
Thanks.
that's great. And I was wondering if you have any songs that you consider socially conscious or deeply meaningful to society. Not, and I said I listened to all of your music. Some of it I couldn't pull up the lyrics. That's another thing that you can do. We just did that with all of our tunes from Liquid Blue. We made sure all the lyrics were there, and that'll get you a little bump up. But I have a playlist that I run. It's socially conscious songs, and I've got about 1,000 followers on it, and it's just all this really cool socially conscious songs. And I'd love to find a couple of yours to put in there if that does exist.
We have a song that we've never played live, and Roger wasn't on that album. It was called it's the Wish, but the song is called Red Light, and it's basically a protest song about the oil business and rich man's greed and stuff like that. It's like kind of like Stop the World, I Want to Get Off, you know.
We had that song "Fight for It" too on Uncut, I think.
And
Yeah.
I did listen to that one a couple times. That's a good song, but I'll go back and listen to that one
I,
because now
I
I've
would say, I would say politically, we're we're actually quite political. I don't put as much stuff. I actually have my own political page for the
Yeah.
for the stuff.
I
And
never I never mention politics on
yeah,
Facebook. It's
I
just
think the band decided a long time ago that don't want to alienate anybody. So if we ever did a political song, it'd be like stand up for your rights and stuff like that, opposed to getting into actual, details about,
yeah,
about
that's
things
good.
we're
That's all we
not
need to
happy with.
say. I'm
Yeah,
the same way. I mean, we all tiptoe through this stuff
yeah,
in there for a lot of good reasons, of course. There are some people that just get out there and throw the punches out there,
too
but
much.
and I've
Yeah.
done some of that. But anyways, I digress. I want to get back to your music here. I was just a little personally curious on that. And what are your main influences when you came into rock and roll? Um, when were you in your first bands, and what bands were influencing you the most, and acts?
Uh, Well, I was influenced at a very early age. I can remember listening to Mahalia Jackson on TV on Sundays when I was about 3 or 4, and then Everly Brothers, and then
mm,
I was lucky to have a sister that was 7 years older than me. So when I was going through my early childhood, I had all that, but I was already into it. I'll tell you the first thing that ever impressed me. I was about 5 or something like that, and I was over at my cousin's house, and cousin's same age, and she had a sister that was 15, and Elvis Presley came on Ed Sullivan's show for the first time, and my 15-year-old cousin, we're looking at her, we're all standing there watching her, and we're looking at her, and something's wrong with her. All of a sudden, her eyes went up in the back of her head, and she passed out on the floor, just looking at Elvis
oh man.
on TV. And
Oh
I
my
went,
gosh.
okay, that might be something to think about. And then, and just fast forward when the Beatles came out, uh, uh, two friends of mine were over this girl's house, about 6 girls, to see Ed Sullivan and the Beatles for the first time, right? So they're screaming the entire time that these guys are on TV, and us, the three of us, looked at each other. We went, and we all got guitars for Christmas. That was my first band. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, it was around I was around 14, 15, around there. And that was the start of my thing. And I went through the whole English stuff. And the cool thing about the listening to English bands was the Stones in the early days, they hadn't written any songs yet.
Yeah.
So a lot of their songs were American R&B and blues songs. So that's how I got into the blues, was through the Stones. And then the Yardbirds came out, and I started doing some idol worship there, and then Hendrix, and Clapton and Cream and all that kind of stuff. I would say my three major influences are Clapton's first album with John Mayall, the Beano album, Jeff Beck's first album with Rod Stewart and Nicky Hopkins, and I saw that band twice, by the way. And then I would say, those are the two. Oh, and then Hendrix, but I never. Hendrix was so definable that I never wanted to copy any of his shtick, because people go, "Oh, I know what that is." That's you know what I mean. They could, So I was just trying to get my version of the English guys playing American blues, and that's kind of where my whole thing started.
Very cool. How about you, Michael?
Um, my dad, who I didn't know very well, because they got divorced when I was a kid, but he was a songwriter. So I think I know I grew up for part of the time on his knee, and he wrote like Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy and Beat Me Daddy Ate to the Bar, and a couple of, to me, that was rock back then, in the late 50s and early 60s.
Boogie woogie.
Yeah. And then I started taking piano lessons in the second grade, and my main goal was to learn how to go like on the beginning of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, and I think it's the same thing with learning how to play guitar. I started taking guitar lessons in the seventh grade, and it was because of almost every band then was guitar bands. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah.
Very, very few keyboards. So I was going, well, I got to play guitar. So I started learning all these Beatles songs, and I remember learning how to play a bar chord. That was the hardest thing in
There
the
you
whole
go. You
world.
got you got it nailed. We got the barcode.
And then so we had this copy band in high school, and we were really just for us. We didn't even have a bass player. We had a drummer and two guitar players, but we still play birthday parties and stuff like that. And then we decided we need a keyboard player if we're going to play this song, because we in the South, this was in Atlanta, you have to play like 50% R&B and 50% rock, so we had to learn, like James Brown songs. There's a B3 in there. We had to learn Otis Redding, all this Motown stuff, and there's an organ. So a buddy of mine says, I can play keyboards. My dad's going to buy me an organ. We said, perfect. So it takes 3 months. His dad buys him this little organ. It's this big, and it blows air out of the bottom of it. It's like a harmonica, and we're going. So
Like
we tried
an
putting a
accordion.
Shure mic under there. It was going. And we go, dude, this isn't going to work. And I realized that he couldn't play. I always assume if people say that they're a keyboard player that they can play good. I go, I can play way better than that. So I spent all summer working, and I bought a Ream organ,
Oh, there you
which
go.
was cheaper than a Vox Continental and cheaper than, what was it?
Farfisa.
A Farfisa. And it sounded fine. And then the next summer, I worked all summer long, and I bought a Leslie, and then
There you go.
it sounded like a friggin' organ, and as far as the bands go, I loved, of course, everything the Beatles have ever done. I loved Chicago. I love the Horns. I love Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Like Chicago more. And who did I like back then? The Doobie Brothers.
Oh.
And and I always thought Led Zeppelin was from L.A., but I love Led Zeppelin. And I love Deep Purple. And I remember when that Live in Japan album came out.
Oh yeah, made in Japan.
Yeah, it took my ears off just to hear that thing, and I went, okay, I'm gonna focus more on the Hammond thing, and
That's great.
that's where we are.
Good stories. Now, I want to just briefly touch on Gene Simmons. I know you guys crashed a Kiss party and
Yeah.
ended up meeting Gene. It's amazing how often Gene was involved with groups from this era. He was very involved with Angel, of course, helping them get signed to Casablanca and other groups too. But I guess he really liked you guys, and was he one of the biggest reasons that you guys got signed to Mercury, or how much credit would you give him?
Mhm.
And what was it like touring with those
I
guys?
don't think he had any contacts at Mercury. He did want to take us under his wing, though. He wanted us to sign with his booking agency, and we actually our first gigs, or not very first, but our first gigs were with opening for Kiss, and it was a company out in New York called ATI. But unfortunately, our management company wanted to go with DMA out of Detroit, and we ended up getting just a boatload of Ted Nugent gigs, and that's when he was big, doing like 17,000 seaters, you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a bad move, but Gene pretty much thought he was out of the picture after that. So
And Gene
yeah,
used to come to our rehearsals.
yeah, he
You
came to a
know,
rehearsal. He
uh,
wanted to manage us.
he wanted. I mean, Gene knows how to make money, and
He wanted
I
to steal Satin Peacock.
well, no, he asked. He
Yeah,
goes, we
yeah.
have a song called Satin Peacock, and he came up to me one day and he says, "Hey, would you mind if Kiss recorded that song?" And I go, no, that's for our first album. And you don't realize if they would have recorded it, it would have been really big, you know. And I never even it didn't dawn on me until about 20 years later why they wanted to record it. It's because the chorus is "Kiss me if you miss me, but don't mess up my hair." And
There
I
you
went, oh, they even have the name of the band in there.
go.
And yeah, it would have been a big song for them. But you know how before you've ever had a record deal, you see no reason why you're not going to be as big as Kiss. You
Well, yeah,
know?
and you remember the Beatles gave the Stones their first song. I think it might have been "Come On," but they shared that song with them. But it would be easy to do that. I think back in the day, I was in a group back then too, and I wouldn't have wanted to share my songs. But knowing what I know now, that could be a big deal. Obviously, if they had made one of your songs a hit, would have brought notoriety to you guys and some money in your pockets, obviously. But
Yeah.
that's how it goes. But that's interesting about Gene. Um, and
You
then
know,
go
one
ahead.
one thing I'll say about Kiss is when we told some of our friends, hey, we're going to go do some shows with Kiss, they go, oh man, you guys are going to get vegetables and rotten tomatoes thrown at you. You know, they only like Kiss. And so our first show with Kiss, I think we had like 25 minutes or something like that. And the audience loved us, right? And so Gene and Paul came into our dressing room after the show and they go, you guys were great. Starting next show, you guys have 45 minutes. So they were, and that's a band that's
They're
really,
supportive,
they
very
were very
supportive.
supportive. That
Yeah.
was really a nice thing for them to do. I mean, they could have said, well, they're really good. Let's give them 15 minutes, you know, because that happened to us with the babies when they were real,
Yeah, babies.
they were real babies.
Nugent also gave us extra time.
Yeah, he did. I mean, they like
Interesting.
it when you're good and you can play to their audience, you
Yeah.
know. And sometimes you do better than they do. But
Well,
we
I
don't
think
talk.
it's a good matchup with you guys. I think you guys and Nugent's a good matchup. You guys and Kiss could be a good matchup as well. So, um, yeah, those were probably really fun shows. I was going to ask you, might as well just slip into it now, is what was your most memorable show, or biggest show, or most memorable, or both?
Probably La Semana, the time, Town Bad Girl time, La Semana.
Hmm.
We headlined there and it was like about 17,000 people.
No, it was 30.
30,000. Okay.
Yeah, and
Even more.
we did it about 4 times. I don't know if we
Yeah,
did
yeah.
every year in a row, but
But that one particular, he has to be the one gig, and that one particular was great. And also when we headlined for the first time at San Antonio
oh
Municipal
yeah, that was great.
Auditorium, that was wonderful. We felt like,
And
wow, that's it, man. So
what year was that one, the first show you mentioned that was your favorite show? What year roughly?
1991, something like that.
Okay.
Tom Bad Girl
Cool,
album.
cool. And
Yeah.
that kind of brings us there. I have that as one of the questions I want to ask you about, and I might as well jump into it now. So I find this is the most interesting thing for me about Legs Diamond is the fact of the following you guys developed in San Antonio. Now, for me, now we know that the legendary DJ Godfather Joe Godfather Anthony was playing your music a lot. And I feel like it's such a lesson in, first of all, you had to be really good to get big in a major city like that. Your music had to be solid legit stuff. And I'm sure you feel like I would that had you had that kind of support in every city, you'd have that type of fan support if somebody was playing your music. And it just goes to show you how much it matters to get a big break. And back in the day, there wasn't streaming. Like if you guys came along today, it's a little more even playing field because you can put your music out there and you're not completely reliant on a record company. Now, you guys had the major label, of course, and that's what we all dreamt of. I was in a group at the same time you guys were. My dream was to get signed by a major label, and you guys did that. And that was not easy to do. You had to have your shit together completely to have somebody like Mercury interested in what you were doing. And it
Mhm.
ended up making this whole career for you, regardless of how far it went. I'm sure you had bigger dreams, but for a lot of us, we would have loved to just have that shot. And I would have loved to have it even if the same thing happened. I wouldn't care if it didn't blow up. It's just a great experience to have. But yeah, that situation in San Antonio is just so interesting. And it just goes to show you really it shows you how great the music was, in my opinion, for
Thank you.
what you guys were doing. And you just didn't have the full support in other places. But now San Antonio's like your haven, and I think that's really interesting. So go ahead and let me hear what you guys think about that and what it's been like with the whole San Antonio thing. You go to a whole different playing field there, a whole different league in San Antonio as far as your following.
I want to just say this about Joe. He was one of the big reasons we had that success in San Antonio, and he apologized to us the last time we met with him because he died a few years later, and he said, what I kind of considered Legs Diamond as something I discovered. And normally, us DJs, we talk like once or twice a week and we tell other DJs what's working for us. And he goes, I never mentioned you guys to any of the other DJs in the other towns. And in a way, he was apologizing for it
Yeah.
because he realized that he sort of just kept us there, and we had this one city, and like you can go next door to Austin, like 60 miles away, and like one third of as many people would show up, or one fourth as many people would show up. And so you realize the power of radio. But if radio guys back then, you didn't have one or two companies that were telling them all what to play. It was all locally driven. If the phones lit up, they would dance to the phone, and if everybody goes, "This is a great song," they play it again. If the phone's lit up, they play it again, and then they add it in rotation. And so, I wish he would have called like somebody in like Tulsa, Oklahoma, and somebody in some other large cities, because if we had 10 or 15 San Antonios, that's all we would do. We could just hit them all once every other year or something like that.
Well, it
But
probably would have snowballed from there too. If you would have had a
yeah,
few more cities, it would have grown. Yeah. Where did you guys grow up, by the way? Where's home for you?
I'm from Detroit. I moved out here in 75. I literally got in Lakes Diamond as soon as I moved out here, practically.
Wow.
So
Michael?
that was quick. I was actually supposed in a band at the time where the whole band was supposed to move out here. I got in an argument with the drummer, and the band broke up like 2 weeks before we were supposed to go. And I go, well, hell with that, because I was already going to move out here with my roadie Willie Twerk, and we just said, fuck it. Excuse me. I don't know what we're doing here. And we just moved out. And like I said, I was in the band as soon as I got here. So what was
yeah,
the question?
they they found me about a month after I got here because I signed up for that musicians contact
that's
service.
that's
Yeah.
Michael.
Yeah.
Michael contacted me through that. Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing.
Um,
I get a call. Like I said, well, since I'm in LA, because I was going to go back to Dallas where I was living and do take some more courses in college. And all of a sudden I get a call and, hey, we're looking for a keyboard player. What kind of music do you play? Because people would say, "Oh, well, we do Uriah Heep, we do Deep Purple, we do." He goes, "They're all originals," and I went, "What?" And because I've written original songs for my cover bands and stuff, but I was like, "Wow, all originals. All right, well, I have to just kind of see what they sound like," and it was really good. But I was born in New York and New York City, and I've lived all over the South, Virginia, Georgia, Louisiana,
So you
Texas.
came to LA about the same time, about 75?
74.
74. Okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah, so Musicians Contact Service, I can't believe you mentioned them because when my band broke up, they were called Electric Warrior. It wasn't the T-Rex tribute or anything. We were a cover band trying to do some originals, trying to do what you guys did, but making some money playing high school dances and various things to put a little money in the band account. And when that band broke up, I signed up for Musicians Contact Service and
There you go.
I got a gig in Anchorage, Alaska, and I sang in a house band that had been there in the same club for a decade already. And I ended up there for 3 years, ended up marrying a girl from Anchorage and coming back down. But Musicians Contact Service changed my life. So I'm glad we can give them a little plug. They're still going.
Yeah,
But I remember going into their office in Hollywood and opening their
yeah,
Yeah.
notebooks, right, and going through. And I'm flipping through every
Yeah.
page. And all
Well,
I did was I found Anchorage, and it was the highest paying job for a singer in the whole country because they
wow.
would pay more because it cost more to live there and they had to fly you up and all that stuff. So I ended up just going, okay, I'm going to send them a demo tape. Send them a demo. They sent me a plane ticket, and that's a whole story. That's part of the book that I'm writing right now. But the lady who ran the band, she'd been in the group for 10 years, and she was a bass player singer. She met me at the airport. She's smoking a joint. She's got her 15-year-old daughter in the car passing around a joint. And I go, oh boy, this is going to be this is going to be an interesting 3 years. So
yeah.
anyway, let's get back to Legs Diamond. But so that's your background, that's your influences, and then and we talked about Mercury Records a little bit. Let me see what else I've got here. Do you guys have any plans to do another album, or are you
Yeah.
pretty content?
No, we keep talking about it, and we do have quite a bit of material. We just it's just hard to get the members together, and hopefully after this gig we play in Texas at the beginning of May, we're going to still spend some time back in the studio and getting the originals together for possibly a final LP. But these days, you don't really
Yeah,
have to put out a whole album. You can put out two, three, four songs just to know people know you're alive. And if you get some feedback on that, you just go ahead and do a whole album. But it's
Exactly.
actually not necessary these days.
yeah. A
You
lot
know,
of people have told me, guys, you should just do an EP, because people aren't buying albums. I had a funny thing last summer. My wife and I were on a vacation in our RV, and this guy did some good work for us on the RV, and of course we paid him for that. But I said, he likes music, and I said, hold on a second, I got some. And I go in the RV, and I had a couple of our CDs, right? So I come out and I go, here, listen to these when you got time. He goes, oh man, I hate to tell you this, but I don't even have a CD player anymore. And I kind of went like light bulb, bing. I'm going, wow, you don't have a CD player. Now I think about it, I don't think I have a CD player in any vehicle I own
have to
anymore.
have to pass out USB hard
Yeah.
drives. Here's our entire
And the
catalog.
artwork's on here too. No, it's not the same. I used to love looking at, the old big vinyl LPs and look at the artwork, especially if they had like a fold out in the big picture. And I'd read all the lyrics while the album was playing. And people don't do that anymore. It's a lost, sort of a lost thing.
Yeah, it might be easier just to do a single and put all your energy into
Yeah,
like a couple
yeah,
songs,
couple
release a
songs.
single and try to make the greatest thing you've ever done. Come up
Yeah.
with something well written and just do the whole thing and if it goes, then you make the album. But yeah, I was just
Yeah,
curious about that. And then
That's
I
what I
have
do.
that
a
that would be my goal. At
cool.
least get a couple songs out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. That would be fun. And so I've got another person on the line here. This is my girlfriend. She's the one with Zoom in order to get your album cover. You can see the album cover, right? The first album. Can you see that?
Where?
It's you'll see it in the recording, but
Okay.
there's actually three people on her. Her name is Selena, and
Oh,
she's using your album cover as the profile pic so that people will
okay.
see it the whole time we're talking. She's got the first
Okay.
album up there. I love that cover, by the way. I like the colors and it's also uh a great album. And so, anyways, Selena, I'm going to ask Selena to materialize here and come on board and tell us what is your favorite song, Selena, from Legs Diamond? Can't see. There you go.
Hey,
Hello.
how you doing?
So my favorite song is Woman.
Not
Thank you.
surprising, right?
Thank you. Yeah, we that's one of our fan favorites.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet you guys play that all the time, right? When you do
Yeah,
a
we
live show.
definitely put it in the set.
Yeah, it
And in
didn't
San
really.
Antonio, we're going to San
Don't give
Antonio.
it away.
Oh,
We're gonna play it.
no, yeah. When we play San Antonio, occasionally, if not always, we play that song, and the entire crowd sings the whole song with
It's
us.
pretty cool.
Yeah, so
That's
it's
awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I had a little tear in my eye last time we did it. So
Yeah.
yeah, hey, where'd she go?
Joey, she pops in and pops out. You don't have to leave. You
Okay,
can stick on there. But
tell,
yeah. So
we'll
she was
tell her
listening with
thanks.
me as I listened to all your stuff and all the records, and then and I told her some stories about the albums, and I told her a little bit about Woman, so she probably honed in on it a little more. She's not the same level of fan that I would be, but she likes that kind of song, I think, a little more than some of the heavier rock. But and then, lastly, I'll just touch on, I know that Michael, that you do some studio recording in Los Angeles. You've worked for Beyonce, Chris Brown, Usher. So you're doing a lot of
Michael
R&B kind of, and
Michael
Michael
Jackson.
Jackson. Michael
Yeah,
Jackson. So
yeah.
that must have been an experience. Love to hear a little bit. Well, I love Michael Jackson. And so what was your experience working with him? Did you have any personal contact with him?
Yeah. I mean, I started out on the history tour for 2 years, and then we started working on the Invincible album, and I got to be, at first you're just hired, you're the new guy, and he doesn't talk to you, he might look at you every once in a while, but eventually we started working on the record. So now I'm recording his vocals and working with his musical director. And so in the end, we became really good friends, and I'd go up to the ranch and stay there and write songs with him. And one day maybe they'll come out, but they're not finished or anything like that.
What
But
was your role? What was your role with him? All your job duties.
I was his engineer, his
Okay.
recording.
Wow. That's awesome.
Big time.
That's big time. Yeah. Fantastic. And you're
It
still
was
active in the scene, right? In Los Angeles, you're still working in studios, still engineering.
not as much, but I mean, we're sitting in the studio right now. It's kind of a mess. It looks like a hurricane hit it, but we had a big fire not too far from our house and Roger's house. Last was it in January?
January, yeah.
And we had to evacuate, and it was scary. So it looks like a tornado hit it, because a lot of things just left here and went in a Suburban and in a Jeep and all that stuff, and it was scary.
Wow. That's really interesting stuff. And then Roger, you're working with the original drummer from Legs Diamond, right? Jeff Poole.
Uh, we were writing songs together, and of course he's in Legs Diamond with me and Mike.
Yep.
So and I also have another band with John Hyde from Detective. I don't know if you remember Detective, but
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Michael, what's
DeBar.
Michael the Bar.
Michael DeBar. He
Yeah,
went.
they were signed what, to Led Zeppelin's labels.
Yeah,
Was it
Swan Song.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we covered them back in the day. Actually, we did an interview with him back in the day. He ended up with Pamela. I think he was one of the first to discover Pamela, right?
I discussed. No, I think Pamela got around.
Who's Pamela?
Well, Pam DeBar now. She's
Oh, I don't know who that
a well-known and written groupie
Never
in
heard of her.
L.A. Anyway,
She wrote a
but
best-selling book called "I'm with the Band,"
yeah,
and
yeah,
it
Oh,
goes through all
wow.
of her escapades. She's very open-minded about it and talks
yeah,
about it. And one of the guys in Shock, his name is Kip Brown. He was the guitar player for the band Shock. Do you guys remember them in LA about the same time as you guys were? But
yeah.
they didn't get the record deal. They were a little more on the punk side. But anyways, he drives her tour bus now, and they tour around to all the places in like Laurel Canyon and Hollywood where she would hang out with the rock stars. You can actually
Yeah.
pay to get on this bus. So that's an interesting story. But yeah, when you
I
said
go to her parties. She has parties quite a bit and has a band that she's trying to push there and set up in the backyard. Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
it's usually quite the party. It's like probably like 100 people.
wow.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't go to parties.
So, I pretty much covered. I went through the questions that I had. If you guys want to add anything else, you can. Let me see if I can see how long.
I want to add a funny little aside story.
Cool.
One day, Jeff and I went over to our friend, and you remember Linda Gallico.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'm still Facebook friends
her,
with her.
me too. And her dad was my dad's publisher. So, somehow we met them because they lived in Beverly Hills or something like that. And so Jeff and I are over there just hanging out at Linda's place, and she's got some friends there. And Linda goes, "Hey, I want to put makeup on you guys." And we're going, "Okay." We had a few drinks, we didn't care. And so she did. Is that my phone? Oh, it probably is. It's gonna, that's it. It's done now. Anyway, so she goes, "Can I put makeup on you guys?" Okay. And so we're just sitting there, not even looking in the mirror. And she does full, like eye makeup and the whole thing. And we forgot that we had this makeup on, right? And so Jeff and I go to the Rainbow, and nobody looked at us weird. I mean, the thing about the Rainbow is you could be the strangest looking thing, and everybody just, oh, he's a rocker, or she's a rocker, or something like that. So anyway, we're going upstairs to the above the Rainbow Club, and over the Rainbow Club. And anyway, we get up near the top of the stairs, and these two guys running behind us, and it was Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth. And so they corner us, by the cigarette machine, and Eddie's going, "Man," he goes, "we'll play with you guys anytime, anywhere. Just let us know." And it's because we got signed a year before they did, right? And I'm going, "Oh, okay, sure," and they were really, really nice, and they were playing at Gazzari's a lot. We're playing at the Starwood a lot, and then we'd both play the Whiskey. But the thing is when you finally get signed and you finally get an agent, you don't have any control over who's playing with who. They tell you you're opening for these people. If once you're big enough, then you can go, "Oh, we want to bring this band along." But by the time we got to a point where we were headlining, they were headlining places that were 3 times bigger, So I would joke even 10 years ago, I go, "Hey, I guess it's time for me to call Eddie and say they can open up for us."
That's great. That's a great story. Yeah.
My story. That's my story.
Yeah.
That's
We got to interview David Lee just before their first album dropped, and that was at a show at the Whiskey backstage. And it's one of the most memorable interviews we ever did. He was just on fire, as he really was a lot back then. You can read that. Our website is rawpowermag.com. It's not finished. We actually just started building it, but
okay.
These interviews will be on a YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel is Raw Power Mag also.
We could share it.
Yeah, you'll be able to share it. I should have it up within a couple days.
Okay. Don't worry. We'll put it on our Facebook pages, and if I can, I'll put it on our website. The only thing is I don't know how to do that, so I always have to pay this lady just to even say we're playing a gig on our website. It costs like a couple $100, but I'll get it on there.
Well, social media is great, and so
and
I think it's been
had it in the 70s.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so I think
we want you to manage us.
What's that?
Yeah,
we want you to manage us. Or at least give us all these tips like you were doing before with Spotify.
Think of it. You could make hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
I love it. It's
hundreds.
I'm one of these guys that is so overworked. I get involved in all these projects. And when we took on this 50th anniversary, Raw Power was just years ago. I wasn't even thinking about it. And then suddenly we're talking about the 50th anniversary. Let's do a final issue and so forth. And a lot of our interviews back then are just really crap. We didn't research the bands and just we just interviewed bands we liked. So I'm sure when we talked to you guys back then, and here's the thing. When I look back at that third issue, I can't really find a question and answer thing. So I don't even know if we interviewed you guys or if we just wrote a story on you. Probably that's what happened. But that magazine is there. It's up. You can turn the pages on it.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
cool.
about 5 or 6 pages are missing from the back. We've got all the other issues. There was only six, but that one we do have some of the, or maybe the entire feature that we did on you guys, and it's
Okay.
nothing special. I'll be honest with you. This one will be a lot better because I did the homework that we should have always done back in the day. But what else can I tell you? Yeah, so it'll be on Raw Power Mag, and yeah, there's a lot of bands that I would have liked to manage, but the thing is that some guys get involved with a bunch of bands. What I've done is I've just focused on this one group. I was a singer of it, and I was just the de facto manager. But I had also managed just about every other group I'd ever been with, and so I knew what to do in that regard. And then when I finished up, I hired very young people to take my place. So most of the members of Liquid Blue, even though I've been around 30 years, they're in their 20s and 30s, and they're super high energy. And you can go to that website. It's liquid-blue.com, a
Hmm.
dash in between Liquid Blue, and you'll see kind of what we're doing now. And it's an
Oh,
exciting
cool.
group. And some of those guys are releasing original music themselves, and they've
Nice.
some of them. I mean, there's some real talent there. It's a tough business, though. So just like it was back in the day, it was tough then. It's really tough now. So
When
you
everybody,
need some
every,
breaks.
everybody can do their own album in their bedroom now. So there's just quite
Yeah.
a bit of competition.
I
It's
mean,
true.
when you run take the clock back to the 70s, if we were playing a gig anywhere on the strip, everybody in the band got a thing of flyers that thick and a staple gun, and you'd be walking down Santa Monica Boulevard going click, clink, 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 and go to the next, and then the cops,
Over Laurel Canyon.
yeah, and the cops would pull you over. They wouldn't pull you over; they'd pull over, and they go, "Do you have permission from the power company to do that?" We go, "No." All right, well, you need to stop right now. We'd stop, and they'd drive away, and then we just keep going down the street. They weren't arresting anybody for that, but how things have changed. If we would put that energy into internet marketing, and
We'd be a millionaire.
also we've been told by people in the business that if we had done one more album with Mercury, we would have broken through that little glass ceiling that we were bumping up against, and I think that was a really eye opener to hear it from people that were at Mercury. And we won't go into reasons why. It had nothing to do with us, the band. It was
Management.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
but we
I agree with that. That could have happened. I mean, it really depends on how that next album would have turned out. But had
yeah,
it been done through the Mercury channel, it probably would have been stellar. And if you guys had done an album that was, say, even better than Rock in a Hard Place or Legs Diamond, just a notch above that, and hopefully with something that would catch on, you need one song that really goes somewhere. But
yeah,
what you need is DJs to play it. You needed to get
Exactly.
caught up because some of those songs from those first two albums could have been that anyways. That they were there, they were ready to go. It's just
yeah,
somehow it didn't happen, but it had nothing to do with a lack of good songwriting and good production. I mean, I feel like you guys did those two albums were stellar, and they belong in rock history, and that's why I'm concerned about the legacy and everything. I want your Spotify page to be flawless because I always tell bands, especially the ones like when I talked to Shock, they weren't even on Spotify. And I said, if your music is not on Spotify, your music does not exist anymore. And if you're on there, it's on for perpetuity. People can listen to it forever, and it can actually gain traction there, but you want everything to be nice and neat, and you want your albums to have the right years assigned to them. People can look back through your history and whatever the bio is, people read those bios, and you want that to be accurate. And who knows, main thing is, it's there for posterity. It's there for the history, and people can discover it, and they will. Some people will discover it because of this interview. Now, we don't have a large audience right now at all because we just started back up, and this is going to be a temporary project. We're going to do this will happen for about 2 years until the 50th anniversary. We're going to interview a bunch of people, but I don't have time or energy to continue it. I'm too involved in other projects and everything. And the big thing is I'm writing a book right now, and there is a
Well,
book about raw power that'll come out, and you guys will definitely be in it. I've already written those chapters. So
thanks.
there's a section in there about Lakes Diamond,
Thank
and
you.
I can't tell you when it's going to be published, but I'm working real hard on it right now. It's already a lengthy book that'll need a lot of editing. But those, so I'm involved in the book, the magazine, and of course, Liquid Blue,
That's
and
awesome.
so forth. So, anyways,
Yeah, we
it's been
appreciate you.
it's been a real pleasure talking to you guys, and let's just I wish you guys all the best, and I'll get
Thank
this. I'll send you an email once we have it up and running. So I'm going to
That
Awesome.
sounds great.
stop the recording now.